Okay guys, so we are going to start our first lesson from the unit on surface area today. So I'm just setting up my note page like we always do. I'm going to put my name, the date, and the class period in the top left hand corner of the notes so that way I can grade it, and then I'm going to put the title of the notes on the top of my page. And today that title is How Are 3D Figures and Area Related? So we're going to learn how to find the surface area of three-dimensional figures over the next couple of days. And so we're going to learn about things called nets today. So nets are two-dimensional. So that's important for you to know. You're going to use just your basic shapes to draw your nets. So they're two-dimensional composite shapes. So if you remember from when we did scale factor, composite shapes are kind of when you have a bunch of smaller shapes, they come together to make a larger shape. And these can be folded to create the 3D shape. So, or object, shape, object. So you're going to do a Desmos activity this week, which is a thing you're just going to be able to click on a link to, and you're going to work with nets and different 3D figures, just because I think it'll be hard for you to do that without that. So I'm going to go ahead and insert a picture here of a cube and some nets of a cube. So give me just a second to do that. So we are going to figure out which nets will actually match that cube. So there could be more than one that's right. And we are going to try to figure out which ones out of all five of those would actually be able to be folded up into a cube. So you're also going to be able to explain why. I want you to really think about it. So I want you to take about 3 minutes and work on that on your own. And so pause the video and then come back after you've figured out which ones. So now that you've paused the video and you have looked at these different nets and thought about how they could fold up and to think about if they could make a cube or not, I want you to look at this first net right here while I'm erasing and think about, could I fold that up to become a cube? So looking at that, yes, we could. The four in the middle right here would be the sides of the cube, and these would be the base. For this second one, it's the same thing. All we did were move the two bases, so that would still work. And the same thing with the third one. We just moved the bases again. So those first three would all come together and be able to form a cube. Same with shape 4 here. I know it looks a little weird, but that can be folded into a cube as well. The only one that cannot be folded into a cube is this fifth shape here, and that's because these two squares right here for the bases would overlap. So your cube actually would look more like an open box, and it would not be able to have two bases. So that last shape is not going to work. And so here I'm just writing that out for you. You don't have to draw all these nets. That's okay. So we are going to go ahead and keep going on to the next thing. So like I said, these two flaps or squares right here would cover the same side of the cube. So there would not be a top, or there would not be 6 bases for the cube, so it would not be a cube. So all solids have a net. All 3D shapes will have a net. Cubes are unique because they are composed of squares or 6 equal pieces. So just like if you think about a dice, every single side is the same length, and that is what makes it a cube. So that means that all of your faces are going to be equivalent. And that's all this definition that I'm writing right here says, so make sure you copy that down. So I'm going to insert another picture here for you. I'm going to try and struggle. So we've got 3 different 3D shapes here. I have a square pyramid, and I say that because the base of that is a square. I have a rectangular prism and a triangular prism. So we are going to practice drawing the nets of these shapes just because I want you to be familiar with what they look like. For when you find surface area, you will need to know how to do that. So the first one we're going to look at is a pyramid or a square pyramid. And as you can see, I'm outlining the base, and I'm doing that to make sure that I start with that square base when I'm drawing the net. So that normally when you draw a pyramid, you're going to want to start with the base. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a square because that is the base of the pyramid. So there's my square. And then looking at that shape again, all of my faces are triangles and they're all the same size. So now I'm going to draw one triangle coming off of each side of the square. And that is what your net would look like for a square pyramid. So the next shape we're going to look at is a rectangular prism. A lot of you all will be tempted to call this a rectangle, and I want you to get out of that habit because a rectangle is a 2-dimensional shape. This is a prism and it is a rectangular prism. So make sure that that is what you are referring to this shape as. If you write rectangle on the test, that will be wrong. So these are kind of different than a pyramid because you can kind of start with whatever side you want. So I'm going to go ahead and outline the bases here. So the bases are the 2 things on the sides of the prism, and I'm going to go ahead and draw those along with one side of the prism. And I like to draw mine where the bases are just right across from each other. In the net, I think it's easier that way. If you want to get fancy and draw them differently, you can, but I would advise you not to do that because that is where you will go ahead and make mistakes. So looking at that rectangular prism, I'm going to have two small rectangles that are my bases, and then I will have 4 more rectangles for my net. And then the last shape that we are going to look at is a triangular prism. And just make sure that you are using the word prism. And it's really easy. Basically everything other than a pyramid right now for this lesson is going to be a prism. And you can just figure out if it's triangular or rectangular by looking at the base. So here I'm going to do the same thing I just did. I'm going to outline the bases because I like to start with those. And as you can see, they are triangles since this is a triangular prism. And I'm going to go ahead and come down here and begin to draw my net. So I'm going to draw two triangles, or I'm going to start with one triangle. And I'm going to connect it with one face of my prism, just like that. And so here my faces are rectangles. Okay, so that's what makes it a prism, when your faces are rectangles. If your faces were not rectangles, this would be a pyramid. Okay, and that is how you draw the net for a triangular prism, okay? So go ahead and click on part 2 for the video, and we are going to go through how to actually start to find surface area.